So, I've been playing a lot of Pokemon Quest. It's free, it's Pokemon, and Pikachu looks like this. What more could I ask for? I've accumulated roughly 10 hours of playtime, which doesn't sound like much, but it's actually a pretty decent amount for mobile-inspired games. You know, the ones that you pick up and play for like 5 minutes. It's scheduled to be released for mobile devices at some point this month. But until then, you can play it on your Switch. For those who might be worried about the free to start label Game Freak slapped on the game and want a second opinion before they dive in, lest they risk plummeting into microtransaction hell, I've got one for you. Let's talk about it. As the unseen player character, you set off for Tumblecube Island to explore it and amass its treasures, and you're accompanied by a drone that has the capabilities to help you uncover these treasures. Its name is Moby 5, but I prefer to call it the Poke Drone. There's something hilarious about it and drones existing in the Pokemon universe in general. Anyway, to explore the island, which can get pretty treacherous, you also need to enlist the help of some of the local Pokemon. Just like in the main series games, one of the first things you do is pick a starter. All of the Generation 1 starters are viable choices, including Pikachu and Eevee, and once you pick, the game throws you straight into an Expedition tutorial. Expedition is its terminology of choice for the gameplay segments, and on Expeditions you traverse a limited space with up to 3 of your own Pokemon and battle wild Pokemon, usually in hordes. Your Pokemon will navigate the map on their own, but it's up to you to issue attack commands as well as tell them when to scatter to avoid attacks with especially large scopes. Unless you want to switch to auto mode, of course, which does exactly what it implies. Takes away all of your agency and allows your Pokemon to be completely computer controlled. Call me lazy if you want to, but I actually use auto mode a lot while I'm grinding my lower level Pokemon in areas I've already cleared. And I totally recommend that other people do the same. It's there for a reason after all. All of the navigating and battling takes place in real time, which is hilarious and terrifying to behold. Depending on the intensity of the attacks being dished out, the Pokemon can fly around the screen like pinballs. But oddly enough, I wouldn't compare it to Pokemon Pinball. Instead, I'd compare it to Pokemon Rumble, but jacked up to 11. At the end of each expedition, you'll fight a supersized boss Pokemon, and beating the boss will get you drops, experience points, and access to more levels. Clearing all of the levels in an area will unlock new areas, just like you'd figure, and each area has different typing, so having certain types on your team of 3 will grant you bonuses. Like usual, you'll want to keep your roster pretty diverse. There are other ways to grind and improve your Pokemon outside of expeditions too. One of the drops you receive from going on expeditions are stones, and these stones can be put into 2 categories: Power Stones and Move Stones. Power Stones increase your Pokemon's stats and can sometimes apply additional perks. The higher level your Pokemon is, the more of these stones you can equip to them at a time. Move Stones, on the other hand, supply an added punch to your Pokemon's moves specifically, whether they increase the number of hits they can dole out per move or decrease the wait time needed before they can use the move again. They're also more rare to come across than Power Stones, and additionally, not all Move Stones are compatible with every Pokemon or every move, which makes finding stones that are compatible with your favorite Pokemon's moves a fun challenge. Then there's the training menu, which lets you consume the weaker Pokemon you have no use for otherwise to pour experience points into the Pokemon you want to keep long term. A very nice and thoughtful alternative to the game, encouraging you to banish your overflow monsters with no compensation. You can also teach Pokemon with less than ideal movesets new moves this way, but unless you're consuming the same breed of Pokemon as the one you're attempting to teach a new move to, it's not guaranteed. So how do you even catch Pokemon in this game? Well, that's the funny thing. You don't catch them. Not in the traditional sense, anyway. You actually lure them to your base camp with food. That's right, there's a cooking feature, but it's not very complicated. The Berry Blender minigame in Generation 3 was actually more complicated than it is, and that was like a rhythm game. To cook, you'll need 2 things. 1, a cooking pot, the most basic of which you unlock by default at the start of the game, and 2, ingredients, which you don't really need to worry about either. You'll gather loads of them during during your expeditions. And the stones I was talking about a minute ago can be converted into ingredients when you decide you don't need them anymore. The only even remotely tricky part is picking and choosing which ingredients you want to use. There are a multitude of different recipes to uncover, all of which attract different Pokemon based on their color, type, and rarity. But the pattern is pretty easy to figure out, and each time you make something you haven't before, the game automatically logs the makeup of the dish for future reference. A random Pokemon will also stumble into your camp once every 22 hours. So even if you don't have time to play one day, you'll still find yourself with a new recruit whenever you get around to it the day after. Pretty cool. Alright, we're changing gears now. Here come the stereotypically mobile elements of the game, most of which I don't find frustrating personally, but I know other people do, so I'm gonna be super transparent about all of it. To go on an expedition, you need to have a charge. Your battery can hold up to 5 charges at a time by default, and to restore your charge without spending any of the game's only and semi-premium currency, PM tickets, you'll need to wait intervals of 30 minutes. Your cooking is also dependent upon these charges. After you've got your ingredients set in your pot, you'll need to go on a certain number of expeditions before the dish is complete and you'll get your new Pokemon. Usually 4 or 5, which seems to be what one play session is intended to consist of. When I called PM tickets semi-premium currency, I meant that it's a currency you can obtain naturally by playing the game, but also through in-game purchases with your real-world currency. To get them without syncing your paycheck, you can either log in every day to redeem your daily 50 or complete quests, which are tasks that you'd probably be completing as you progress anyway. A lot of them are like, clear an area or KO flying-type Pokemon 20 times. Very manageable in my opinion. So it's totally possible to save your tickets and get the things you want from the shop, which by the way are completely optional decorations for your camp. Yes, they're cute and have cool effects that can make progressing more efficient, but they're not integral, aside from the Pikachu surfboard. That one is 110% integral to your experience, and if you don't spend your tickets to get it the second you can, you're playing wrong. Consider the Pika police hot on your trail. In all seriousness though, one thing I do find at least a little annoying about the ticket system in the game at large is the fact that you need to spend your tickets to accommodate for more than 20 Pokemon and 2 pages worth of stones. 50 tickets per expansion, and trust me, I get it. Spending currency to increase your capacity for assets is pretty commonplace for these types of games. You see it everywhere. Gotta generate a bit of revenue somehow. I'm not faulting the developers for that, but that doesn't mean I have to feel good about the way they're going about it. Admittedly, on the front of expanding your camp to be able to host more Pokemon, it's pretty well balanced. 50 tickets gets you 20 more spaces. You could purchase that in a pinch with your daily alone. My main issue lies with the stones. Getting ingredients in exchange for recycling them is nice and all, but having to constantly keep an eye on how many I have in supply is just another degree of unnecessary micromanaging. So it needs some fine tuning is all I'm saying. Maybe an auto recycle button alongside the pop-up that recycles your 9 weakest power stones by default so you can get right back to expeditioning. No hassle required. That'd be enough to satisfy me anyway. That complaint aside, I am pretty confident that general fine-tuning will happen at some point, probably after the team can take all of their attention off of putting the game on mobile devices. Game Freak did an awesome job with Magikarp Jump after all. I don't think they'd drop the Pokeball on Pokemon Quest, and Pokemon Quest is a very fun game overall. I definitely haven't gotten bored of popping on to find my Pokemon stacking themselves on top of each other like the cutest, blockiest cheer squad of all time. And I'm super excited to have it on my smartphone, which will be way more accessible for me personally. I'm also excited to see if they ever expand upon its current scope. Regardless of how you feel about the game itself, you've got to admit that seeing the remaining 750 Pokemon and its unique take on sprite art in 3 dimensions would be pretty amazing. One more thing I'll say about it for those who might want to install it on their Switch is that it's way more suited to touchscreen control. There's button mapping and shortcuts for those who aren't playing in handheld mode and all, and you can control a pointer with your joystick to achieve a similar effect to using a touchscreen, but it's pretty clunky. So if you're finding the docked controls aren't very intuitive for you, go with the touchscreen. So those are my thoughts on Pokemon Quest. What are your thoughts? Are you excited to play on your smartphones and tablets? For those of you who have been playing on your Switch, did you find any shinies yet? I got a shiny seal myself. I didn't even notice at first because the difference was so subtle on my screen. Hit me up in the comments. And if you liked this video, feel free to subscribe to see more in the future. If you like Pokemon spin-offs, I did a video on Pokemon Channel, one of my personal favorites. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.